Okay, so today we have an expert with NAMI, and NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and she is located in Philadelphia. Our special guest today runs the End the Silence program, but she's also been a former music publicist, so she knows all about musicians and how they think and behave. On top of that, she's also learned to successfully manage and live with bipolar disorder too, along with ADHD, PTSD, and has overcome alcohol addiction. So she is a true check your head superhero. So today I'd like to welcome Becca Lane to the podcast. Hey, Becca.
Hi. Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk with you.
Likewise.
You know, we've heard Mackenzie Nicole's story about bipolar disorder, but I wanted to start with the basics. Can you tell me what is bipolar disorder and what are some of the symptoms to look for?
Sure. So bipolar disorder is a mood disorder, and it's characterized by shifts in mood, but not your standard shifts in mood, right? We all have shifts in our mood. Is extreme ups and extreme downs. So the extreme ups are called mania. You can also have hypomania, which is more bipolar too. But the extreme ups are always paired with the extreme downs, which is depression. So bipolar 2 has the hypomania and more of the depressive episodes. So in order to have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, you have to have had at least one manic period. And in order to have a bipolar 2 disorder, you need to have had a depressive episode that is periods of depression every day for 2 weeks. At least that's what the DSM says. So.
Now, how often do the swings happen? I'm just kind of curious about that. I mean, is it, every month, every week, or is it every, does it vary with each person?
Yes, it varies with every person is different. You could have one manic episode in your entire life and still have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. But most of the time, it really varies. Like somebody could have this happening month to month, every few weeks, or every few years. So it really does vary from person to person.
Mackenzie Nicole did a really good job of describing her depressive state. We didn't get too much into her manic state.
Right.
Can you give me an example, of somebody who's going through a manic state? Like, what are their thoughts or what their behavior might be like?
Sure. So for bipolar 1 disorder, which I believe is what Mackenzie Nicole has, the mania is often comes with psychosis. So and so that actually can sometimes be misdiagnosed as schizophrenia. But the psychosis can be shown with hallucinations, delusions. Somebody might believe there are people coming after them. They might believe they're talking, that God is talking to them, or somebody is talking to them, like auditory hallucinations. And then that's also paired with reckless behavior, sleep disturbance. So when I'm experiencing mania, and like I said, I have bipolar 2, so it's more hypomania. I can go a couple days without sleep at all. I can go weeks with maybe a couple hours of sleep at night. But then that's always followed by a depressive episode where I will go days without being able to get out of bed and not get out of bed, but sleep for days. The sleep is a big thing with mania. And honestly, like anybody who goes days without sleep is going to have some psychotic symptoms. So,
Mm-hmm.
that does go together, but also pressurized speech. So it's not just talking really fast. It's just, it does sound like talking really fast, but it doesn't really make sense. And it will be going, like someone will be going from like topic to topic without, there really seeming to be an order there.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. Yeah. Well, also just, I mean, with the hypomania, something that was, that were symptoms that were obvious to others for me was that I would have all these big ideas and I would start all these projects and I wouldn't ever be able to finish them, or I would get so obsessed that I couldn't stop, and nobody could tell me that this wasn't going anywhere, or like that I needed to move on to something else. And then that actually led to me losing jobs. And, and I also wasn't deferential to authority like my boss, and I thought I knew best. And, there's that inflated sense of self that can come, or there's like an inflated sense of self, or even, delusions of grandeur. The difference, like an inflated sense of self, is that you think you're, you know better than everybody else, and nobody can tell you what to do and all of that. But then there's like delusions of grandeur, is like you're Jesus Christ. So those are symptoms. Also, extreme irritability. I would go from 0 to 60 in terms of my rage. And so it was really not fun to be around me.
Well, that could be, I mean, I could see how that can really affect your relationships in all ways, your family, your, partner, your career.
Oh, yeah.
When you would go from, let's say, 0 to 100, oftentimes I would think you don't have time to think about what you're saying, that you're basically just reacting with emotion.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like your brain isn't really, it's not connecting with the way that you're feeling, and in your body too. Like it was like I would see red and my body would like physically feel different. Like it was going to burst, and it's not just tightness in your chest. It was literally like my body felt like it was going to like explode.
Wow.
And, yeah. And it was really difficult to talk myself back. Like I get mad now, but I can talk myself down. And it was really, I couldn't talk myself back from that anger.
Well, do you feel, I know you had mentioned addiction. Addiction is often tied to mental and mood disorders. Do you feel that was a component to some of the addiction that you experienced through your life?
Oh, absolutely. So some of the early symptoms of bipolar disorder can be misdiagnosed as ADHD. Like I said, the not being able to like starting and finishing, that can be seen as ADHD. Also, irritability can be attributed to ADHD, and then or just depression. And actually, the treatment of depression without understanding the mania can increase a manic, accelerate a manic episode, or in sometimes hard, worst cases, suicidal behavior. But so with the addiction, very early on, I was feeling the depression kind of started to pop up more noticeably with me. And I was I was diagnosed at the same time stimulants for my attention deficit disorder. Noticed early on that was really helping my depressive feelings, and that became something that I really wanted to always have in my possession. But then I also, the thoughts that came with the depression and the anxiety Because it's, yeah, like depression, anxiety, ADHD, those are all things that can be looked at as individual diagnoses, but that all are attributed to bipolar disorder as well. So those were things that I wanted to self-medicate. I needed to calm down my racing thoughts and my inner self telling me that I was worthless and, you know, not like that I was going to be alone forever. All of those thoughts that come with depression, I wanted to drown them out. And so that was kind of when my addiction began. And then it only got worse. And then as my mania started to appear, because usually, most typically, manic episodes don't really begin to appear until early adulthood. So in your 20s. I think the average age of diagnoses for bipolar disorder is 25. So so those symptoms didn't become more obvious until later, and by that point I was already self-medicating, and then I kept getting told to calm down and relax, and you know,
that probably just got you even more angry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who likes to be told relax? That's like that's
right, exactly. Well, you know, one thing you pointed out was that bipolar can take on the guise of so many other mood disorders. And I would think that that's why it takes so long to get a proper diagnosis and also to get the proper medication that's going to work for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I understand that it does, it can run in families.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take for you to get the proper diagnosis and, you know, to get on the right medication or therapy for you?
A long time. Because again, it was not really understood what so I didn't get diagnosed with bipolar disorder until I was in my 30s, probably around 30. But by that point, I was so deep into my addiction that I was self-medicating, and so the medication that they were trying to put me on wasn't working, because it can't. The alcohol and drugs doesn't allow your system to process psychotropic medication. So it just wasn't working. And I also was trying to hide my addiction, and so I was seeing a therapist, but I wasn't honest with that therapist. So none of the things that I was trying to do to treat this bipolar disorder were able to work, because I wasn't letting it. So I finally went into treatment about 4 years ago. And that was my 4-year anniversary, was just last month, actually. And that was when I was finally able to come to terms with my addiction and detox, and then get medicated. And I stayed in treatment for a long time so that I was able to, get all the coping skills and, therapy and everything. I was able to get a routine and understand what it was that I would need to do to stay, and also and to stay mentally healthy, and also understand why I felt the way I did, and why I acted the way I did, and that it wasn't my fault. And that's a huge, huge thing to become aware of.
Well, yeah, that's like kind of the mental health component, right? Just kind of like thinking back on what might have caused some of the trauma or some of the complications in life that can affect, your mood disorder, or maybe causes stress that can, make things worse.
Right.
So you've been, you said you've been good for like 4 years.
Yeah.
Which, big congratulations on that. That takes a lot of strength. Let me tell you, a lot of inner work, I'm sure, and a lot of trial and error. Right.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't end. Like, you're always, it's something you have to work at every day. So that's why they call it recovery. You don't recover, you're in recovery. because you have to constantly work at it. And,
Yeah. So, are there any therapies or even medications or um, types of counseling that would be better suited for bipolar disorder versus other mood disorders?
So bipolar disorder needs, if we're going to talk about medication, and to each his own. I do believe that bipolar disorder is a biological condition that needs to be treated medically, and just like diabetes or lupus or any sort of systemic disorder. So I believe that I need to take medication for my disorder chronically. And with bipolar disorder, what's recommended is mood stabilizers. It can also be treated with antipsychotics or in some cases antidepressants. But with that, you have to be careful because sometimes elevating the depression can can accelerate a manic episode.
Mm-hmm.
So most often mood stabilizers are what's preferred. And then in terms of therapy, I go to a therapist. It depends on the week. Once or twice a week, never less than once, but sometimes twice. And that's talk therapy, and that works really well for me. And it's also, she's trained in dialectical behavioral therapy, which also works for me. That's commonly used with different sort of personality disorders, but that a lot of it's still something that's necessary for me in terms of my behavior and modifying my behavior. And I did do a DBT group early on, but there's lots of different kinds of therapy, and I also go, because I'm in recovery from addiction. I go to AA also.
Mm-hmm.
Not for everyone, but that works for me. And it works for a lot of people. And, so it's not just about the 12 steps, which are very helpful, but it's about the fellowship and being amongst people who understand what I deal with on a daily basis and what I've dealt with in the past. And so that I have people that I can call and say, this is what's going through my mind. And they're like, oh, that's fine. You're not crazy. But not that I don't like to use that word, but having a group of people, like supports in place that really can understand me, is what's really helps on a daily basis.
Yeah, that understanding is just so key. When
Yeah.
you feel like you're so weird or different or misunderstood, all of those adjectives, when you're going through it, how has your life changed now that you feel like you've gotten, you're able to manage this?
Oh, wow. It's so different. It's like night and day. My relationship with my family is so much better. They trust me. I remember my mom said, I mean, it was 2 years ago now, but I made some joke about how like we hadn't called each other in 2 days or something, and I was like, oh, so you wouldn't even know? I could have been laying dead in my apartment and you wouldn't know. And she was like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And it makes me emotional when I say it now. But they don't. It's just a new relationship. They trust me. They don't have to worry about me. And I don't have to worry about me as much, which is really nice. And I feel like when I see the sun come up, it's a good thing.
Mm.
I'm not scared of the sun coming up, and I'm able to hold a job. I've been working at NAMI for over 3 years, which is, I think, the longest I've ever held a job for. So that's really something. And I have relationships with friends that I never had before. as well, where I'm able to contribute to the relationships as much as I'm able to take. The give and take is equal, as opposed to before it was take, take, take. So.
Well, that's a thing with some mood disorders. Like I know with ADHD, it can seem like, a one-sided thing. And you mentioned dialectical behavior therapy, which I know is pretty good also for ADHD because it actually allows you to think about, what you're doing, what you're saying, and I guess try to get the skills to not be as reactive.
Right. Emotion regulation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of discipline, I would think, even more so, right?
Right.
For someone with ADHD. But I am so proud and just so excited for you. Let me tell you, you look so bright and happy. And it's just important for people to know that there is a different life, a better life beyond, when you can find the right help, the right kind of recovery, and you're able to manage what you're going through.
Yeah.
So I know you're doing some great things out there at NAMI Philadelphia, and you're in charge of the End the Silence program.
Yes, ending the silence.
Ending the silence. Can you tell me a little bit about that program?
Absolutely. I could talk for days about ending the silence. It's my baby. But the Ending the Silence program is a teen mental health awareness educational program where we go into schools and youth programs and we talk to students about mental health. We talk about stigma. We talk about warning signs, symptoms, suicide prevention, how to help a friend, what to do. And then the best part is we have a young person share their personal story. And that's where the students really feel like they get something because they can relate to, aspects of the story or, see that there's hope. And that's really the point of the whole thing is to provide hope because 50% of mental illnesses start presenting symptoms by the age of 14. So by starting young and really getting in there and, introducing the concept of mental illness and what that could look like, and that the fact that there is hope and there is help, that can really help people get into treatment earlier because it takes about 8 to 10 years for people to get into treatment. And that's largely because of stigma, which is what we're hoping to overcome. Program.
Well, I'm glad you're out there normalizing the conversations on mental health. That's one of the missions of the podcast. Yes. And I know if people want to know more about the Ending the Silence program, they could go to NAMIPhilly.org.
Yep.
And you could also go to checkyourheadpodcast.com to find out more about NAMI and to get help anywhere across the country, right? Because there's chapters all across the country.
Yes. Each state has its own chapter, and then there's affiliates in all the different counties of each state. So they're all over.
And you just started a new podcast.
Tell me
a little about that.
So the podcast is called the YANA podcast, which is YANA, stands for You Are Not Alone. And with everything that's happened with COVID, our being able to go into schools kind of ended the same time the world seemed to. And so we were trying to figure out ways to connect with young people, and especially not knowing what this school year is going to look like. I know Philadelphia, for instance, really just decided that they're going to do virtual for the first quarter and then go hybrid. Like they're still kind of figuring it out day by day. So with not really knowing what that's going to look like, we tried to come up with some ideas. And one of the ways I know podcasts are the cool thing. So we started a podcast where we are talking to other young people, kind of like what the Ending the Silence program is. We're having young people come on and talk about their experiences. We're chatting with them, trying to, they'll share with what they've experienced, but also what they're doing to cope and where they are now. And so I don't know. I think it's great.
It is. It's really wonderful. Thank you so much, Becca Lane of
Thank
NAMI
you.
Philadelphia, and really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always lovely to talk to you.
Of course. It's always great to see you, Becca.
Yeah, likewise.
Hi, I'm Fong, producer and host for Check Your Head, Mental Health for Musicians podcast. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like us, please follow us on social media at Check Your Head Podcast and visit us at checkyourheadpodcast.com, where you'll find over 100 mental health resources that will assist you in your mental health recovery. You rock, and we love you.